everybody, it is time to do our first video. We are going to study about how people moved west. Remember, with this video you can pause it anytime you need to, you can rewind it, you can review it as many times as you need to in order to get this information. And while you're reviewing for the test, you can even come back and watch it again. So if you are ready to go, we will start. Remember to fill in the answers in your homework when you are going through this video. And if you have any questions that I don't answer, jot them down on the back of your paper and we will talk about those tomorrow in class when we review. So last week and today we discussed manifest destiny. And remember that this is the idea that the Americans had the God-given right to expand and occupy the land in North America. We also talked about which purchases the Americans made, and you can see there the Territorial Expansion Map, and we look at how they were made and who bought them and when we bought them. And though all throughout the 1800s, which is the 19th century, the Americans continued to move west. The question that we're asking today is how. So we discussed this picture as part of your homework last week, and here you can see it a lot clearer. You can see the buffalo herd in the very far left side there, kind of in the background. You can see the miners. You can see the animal in the bottom corner that's actually a bear. You can also see the Native Americans that are sort of running away to the west. You can see the stagecoach, which is underneath the foot of the angel there. And you can also see the railroads, you can see the boats, you can see the covered wagons, and all of these things we said we associated them with westward expansion. So the first thing that we're going to talk about how they moved west is going to be the waterways. So we have rivers and we have lakes that people used to travel west. Just like today, they had to have kind of a road to get there. And if you look at this map, you can see there's a lot of rivers here that could have been used. The major lakes are going to be the Great Lakes up there, Lake Ontario, and Lake Erie, Huron, Michigan, and Lake Superior. So which rivers do you think the people would have used to go west is the question there at the bottom of your screen as well. Here on this map, you can see a little bit, it's a little less confusing. There's not all the rivers on here, all the lakes, but you can see some of these rivers that would have been used, such as the Missouri River, which starts at the Mississippi and kind of goes a little northward. You can see maybe the Platte River and the North Platte River. You can see the Snake River over there in the Idaho, Oregon area. And then you can also see the Arkansas River, which goes kind of across Arkansas and Oklahoma and up into the Colorado area. If you notice real quick, the Missouri River actually kind of follows the Lewis and Clark Trail, and as we discussed when we were talking about Lewis and Clark, they did a lot of their traveling by this river. Not all places had rivers or ways to get to rivers, so because of this, there was someone who invented the concept of the canal system. So it allowed people to travel by boat in a westward way from a major city. One of the most famous is what you see here on the map is the Erie Canal, and it connected New York City to Lake Erie. And though this canal really didn't go very far west, it did connect people to the lake system, and they could then follow all the way through the Great Lake area, and it encouraged movement in that direction. And you can see on the left-hand side here is a picture of a steamboat. They would have traveled by boat on the canal. Now, if you watch this little graphic, we did look at this a little bit in our classes, but it was a very simple man-made waterway. It was fairly shallow in parts. The boats were floated along while being pulled by the mules. The downstream gate would open. The boat would be disconnected from the mules and float into the lock area. Then the gate would close. The water would rise. The upstream gate would open. The mules would reattach the line, and then the canal would continue on upstream. They would close that gate, open the first one back up, and the water level would go back down. And they would just keep doing this. It would be ready for the next boat. So the most common way that people moved westward was going to be by covered wagon. They were able to pack all their stuff in these covered wagons and go overland to the west. Now, there were two major trails. The first one is the Oregon Trail that we're going to talk about. It started in Independence, Missouri, and ended up in Oregon City, Oregon. And this was the longest trail. And it took 6 months to travel by covered wagon from Independence, Missouri to Oregon City. And in order to do this, the families would cross the Rocky Mountains and travel about 2,000 miles through the frontier. And that was not an easy trip. In order to get west, people, and you can see here the actual Oregon Trail, but in order to convince people to make this long trek, the government would pass the Homestead Act. And this act allowed adult males that never raised a weapon against the government to purchase approximately 160 acres of land for a very cheap price. The person then had to move onto the land and live there for about 5 years. And many people left the eastern part of the United States and traveled all the way west so that they had a chance to start this new life out there. The other main trail is going to be the Santa Fe Trail, and cuts the words off of there a little bit, but it says that the Santa Fe Trail also began in Independence, Missouri, and it ended in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It had 5,000 wagons per year traveling on it until the railroad was built. And so this trail opened in 1821, and it closed in 1880 when the railroad reached all the way to Santa Fe. Now, if you do the math, 5,000 wagons a year for that amount of time is actually 295,000 wagons that actually traveled on this trail. That's a lot. Here's another map that shows you sort of exactly where the Santa Fe Trail went. It was 780 miles long, and it went through what is currently Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico, all the way to Santa Fe. So we're coming to the close of our video. As you can see, it wasn't a long one. I have my notes here that I was reading. Sorry if you don't feel like I was looking at you. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Let's just do a quick recap of everything I want you to learn from this video. So the major points for this video are that the idea of manifest destiny inspired people to move west. In order to do that, we had to get away west, and those ways were the canal system, and the canal system opened up western travel by water. The canals were a cheaper and easier way to travel west, and one major canal was the Erie Canal. The two trails that they used were the Oregon and Santa Fe trails, and those were the overland trails, and traveling was difficult and took a long time. So this is the end of video number 1. Tomorrow when you come to class, we're going to begin a project. We're going to identify all of the obstacles, a couple of major waterways, and those two trails. Then, and I hope that you enjoy the activity. And don't forget to finish up your questions and bring them to class tomorrow. And if you have any questions, write them on the back, and we'll talk about those tomorrow. And I'll see you then. Have a good evening.